did not get in touch with you all, but we were going to talk about gun control or mass shooting is really what we were going to talk about today. And we were going to try to post it on I think Micaiah sent Spotify so other people can hear it.
So it'll be Spotify and YouTube.
What's that?
Spotify and YouTube. The audio will be on Spotify. The video and audio will be on YouTube.
Okay. Cool. How did you get you all work out the time as far as it not dropping on Zoom?
So to make an account that doesn't drop, it's $15 per month. And if you just pay $15 per month, you have a limited time.
Okay. I thought that's why I asked you. We can all find a way to chip in so one person doesn't have to do that.
Yeah. It's only $15 a month for it. And I figured it wasn't that big of a deal. So yeah. I was going to get up in the meeting.
All right. Chauncey, because I guess that's your phone that keeps on putting up different names, V50. Who's that? V50 Think.
Is there anybody?
Says they're connecting. Oh, that's good. Okay.
All right, if you guys can put your pictures up, y'all need to have your face on there.
I'm trying to find some place to sit. That's why my camera is not on right now. But I will turn it on.
All right. Well, I guess we should start kind of get opening, get started. I was just talking to Bev about some situations that we're dealing with, and I'm going to try to tie those into the conversation today. So our discussion is going to be on mass murder, and we'd like to share as much light on it as we can. First, I'm going to start out just trying to get it started. What do you think the cause is?
I think the cause is a shift in attitude in a way. So yeah, part of it is a shift in attitude. You know, a lot of people talk about mental illness and whatnot, but it's more than that. I think that we've had people with mental illness, for years, and it has not been the same problem, over the years. And then I think maybe a part of it is that it is almost like ordained by Yah in order to get people to understand the changes that we are seeing. So I mentioned that second one. The main one, though, is I think that it is a change in attitude and
that's the background noise. Probably. Interesting, Chauncey, that you say that a change in attitude, and it is not a mental illness, and so that brings something up to me when you say that it's not mental illness. The question that I would have then is, what determines mental illness? To say that it is not mental illness, what are we going by that determines that it is not mental illness? Part of the structure that you used, Chauncey, was that we've had mental illness for a long time. There's been mental illness in our society, and has not been at this extreme that we're seeing today in mass shooting. The question that I would have to that, though, is, for an example, if mental illness has been going on for years and they have not really found answers or resolved those particular things, as it continues on going, it grows, it deepens, it worsens. And so I'm trying to describe that it is where we are today with mental illness today is not where we were in mental illness several years ago. It's at a worse place. So in essence, it can still be a part of mental illness. So it'd be interesting to discuss where mental illness, what do we determine as mental illness? What really says what is mental illness? Do the doctors, is it the psychologist, the psychiatrist, the psychologist, are they the ones that determine what is mentally ill or not? What really determines that? Can we determine that ourselves?
That's a loaded question. As far as
it's not a loaded question. It's a question.
As far as society goes, most people believe the doctors, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, the in-school physicians, but I have known quite a few people who cannot live down the reputation that is given to them by those doctors. It is harder to seem not mentally ill once you have been given a diagnosis. how do you pretend to be not crazy? That's basically the layman's terms, is how do you undo? You have to keep getting checkups, keep getting, you know, and you have prescriptions prescribed to you, all these different things.
So my response to that is this, giving away somewhat the answer. Even for psychologists, diagnosis, doing things like that, I think we do have to be careful of diagnosing people. But in order to diagnose anything, you have to have a standard of life or living to go by in order to compare the deficiency or the lack. You have to have a basic standard or something, or a picture of the way it's supposed to be versus how it is now. That's across the board. So if you say psychologists or psychiatrists, they have to have something to go by that is the standard of living or a quality of life, and they have to measure that in order to have an accurate diagnosis. So in other words, if I understand that a child is supposed to, normal children are this way, or normal men are this way, this is called normal. Now, when I see a behavior that is outside of that particular thing, then I can have a diagnosis of that behavior. I didn't say what the diagnosis was, but I can diagnose it based off of what is normal. Now, I'm not talking about the norms of today. I'm talking about what is standard, or the quality of life that is meant to be. Does that make sense? So then what we're saying is, if mass murder is not the standard of life, now we're trying to X out that it is, not mental illness. Then what is it? I'm not asking it as a loaded question. What is, so we can say, I'm trying to understand what Chauncey was, the second part of what Chauncey is saying. So I'm trying to create that. If we could just say, reminds me of what I heard in church to some degree, and that was that the reason why people are living evil, so to speak, is because they just don't want to do right. They don't want to live right, or they don't want to give their heart to God because they don't want to. They don't want to have that relationship. And it's the basis of why they don't want to do it. This reminds me of that. If we were to say that it is not mental illness based off of people are just changing. So I want to throw one other thing out and see if we can work with that. There are a lot of people that are angry today in our society. And a lot of angry people that are doing some very desperate things um, very dangerous, harmful things. Is anger, just on a softer note, is anger a part of, or does it play a part in mental illness?
Yes, I would say yes. So what I hear you asking is that really it's a gun control. It applies to gun control as well, because you're asking, what is it that would drive a person to buy a gun? What is the need to protect myself? Why is that there? What is the need to, and really comes from what I understand, is a lack of trust. If I cannot trust anyone around me, then I feel the need to, if I cannot hold anybody accountable around me, I feel the need to, those type of things start coming up when you start dealing with why people buy guns, why people feel the need to go get a prescription because they can't control their environment. They can't hold their environment accountable.
Wow, Micaiah, that's pretty good. I think that's good. So a lack of trust. It is interesting in how we see trust today. It's very interesting how we normally look at that. Any other comments or thoughts?
Hey, you're muted, CJ.
I didn't know that I was thinking really anyway. But one thing, I think when Micaiah talked about a lack of trust, there was something I was going to say about mental illness and how we've been talking about it so far on the call. I think that what Micaiah just defined as mistrust is mental illness. I think that when Michael challenged, and then Uncle Tracy further elaborated on whether you talk about diagnoses in society, but we have to have a standard for how something should operate. There are, I don't know what chapter it is, there are verses in Proverbs that talk about a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, feet, I think, that are quick to something about discord or mischief or something like that. But on one hand, I think that mental illness, even if we think about it not strictly literally, is the mind or the heart, what the things that govern our body. And when those things are deficient or ill, or talking about infirmities, that's kind of how I see mental illness. So.
Very good point, CJ.
I think mental illness is interesting because it almost, when I hear mental illness and I hear diagnoses and stuff like that, I hear society doesn't want to deal with the problem. I hear society thinks that this is a problem too big to be dealt with, to be healed in a sense. That's what I hear when I hear mental illness nowadays. And the idea that that can't be healed or it can't be helped or society doesn't want to deal with it is what is allowing people to say, well, I'm messed up and I can't do anything about it. because society told them that they're messed up and they can't do anything about it besides take these drugs and pay for these treatments. So if I go shoot up a school, I blame it on mental illness. Nobody could do anything about that. I was hurting on the inside. Society doesn't want to be accountable, so why should I be?
Ask that question again. Hi.
I said society doesn't want to be accountable, so why should I be?
All right, CJ, where are you gonna?
No, I was just saying that was interesting to me because I think what I hear Micaiah speaking to is how he is talking about nowadays and how there's certain things or certain illnesses, even the way what we've been talking about mental illness, how that's been normalized or accepted in a certain way. When we've talked previously on the Zoom call about temptation or about infirmities, the point of an illness is in one sense to fight against and to remedy, not necessarily to give medication, but for it to be healed. And so Micaiah was talking about how what came to mind was how people talk about, oh, I'm bipolar, I'm this, I'm that, how they accept in one sense and almost excuse. It's almost a way of really denying the illness that they have. They just put a label to it, but they don't address it. That's what I heard him say. And I thought that was interesting because I do believe that it speaks to where we are. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yes. One of the things that stuck in my mind about what Micaiah mentioned is really one of what I would say the part of the healing process of it, and that is accountability. That is something that our society as a whole has moved away from. So in order to keep from having mental illness or something, anything like that, you have to have accountability. You have to understand what accountability is, and you actually have to have accountability. So I think Micaiah mentioned something about accountability. Part of accountability really is assessing or going through a continual evaluation. So it's being evaluated, and the areas that are several different ways of saying this, the other areas that you have an excessive amount of something, you begin to lessen that. All right. In areas where you don't have enough, you start showing it up, or you get more so that you have balance. We're talking about mental illness. So, of course, we understand an unstable mind or something that is out of balance in the mind. It's over processing or under processing. Those are conditions. We're describing conditions of mental illness, which cause you to have lows or highs. I'm just scratching the surface of it. So if you have an accountability, a constant going through an evaluation on a regular basis, every day or once a week, whatever you would say, you're going through evaluation and you see areas where you have too much of something. So you understand that I need to make adjustments and basically give up some of what I have too much of. Areas where I don't have enough. I'm being replenished or whatever in a way to where I have what I need. The balance is a healthy mind between those points. So that's pointing at we need accountability. There needs to be a system of accountability. Where our world is today is we deal with realms of that's my opinion, that's your opinion, which actually X's out points of accountability. Think about what I just said. How I can have you can actually say something about me that is holding me accountable, and I say that's your opinion. My opinion is different, and I stay on the route that I am. Then you just X'd out a point of accountability. That's just an example. A healthy world, any healthy society operates from an accountable place, a place of examination to where you are being examined, where you are being judged. Judgment takes on two parts. Is examination and prescription. If we had that in our society, how much would it impact mass shooting?
So one of the things I heard you touch on was individuality. People are afraid of losing their individuality, so they don't want to be accountable to anything. What we realize when we realize and fully accept that interdependency allows us to see ourselves more accurately and receive help, receive love, is when we start to heal. We can't see ourselves. I had a conversation with somebody at work today, not today, this week, about seeing yourself and how the mind, everybody throughout time has ultimately agreed for the most part that we cannot see ourselves accurately. We can take inventory of ourselves for years and we cannot see accurately. And people get caught up in this whole spirituality journey of, oh, I'm gonna go and investigate myself and see myself accurately, become a narcissist. Because we can't see ourselves. The moment you stop identifying with yourself is the moment you start to heal.
Very interesting. Micaiah, you made some very good points. It connected with condensing down what you said or connected to what you were saying. You brought in something, this is really connecting for me. Your first point was trust. And what you just said connects with that. So what happens is when you deal with, you called it individuality, I call it independence. And you begin to develop a muscle that begins to self-evaluate, that I become, what I would say, I judge myself, I look at myself, I judge myself, and I correct and prescribe my own remedy to what I have judged. It's the world in which we live in. This is what you're touching on, Micaiah. Those are all the basis of mistrust. Very independent. You cannot be a mirror to yourself and call that accountability. Accountability always comes from a community. It always comes from a healthy family. It always comes from a healthy community. It never comes from a independent perspective. You cannot self-evaluate yourself and end up accurate.
So,
That's what I hear you touching on. So it helps you, again, to begin to see mistrust. When I begin to develop those muscles that cause me to evaluate myself and prescribe a remedy according to what I have evaluated of myself.
So, so what you just brought up after what Micaiah said is kind of where my head was going. So CJ kind of started with Proverbs. And one thing that we see is the mental illness or the mistrust. And we put such a big stock on it. This is basically what I've been hearing. We put such a big stock on it that we no longer believe the true picture of healing. So it kind of reminds me of, so in the start, you have a perfect family. In the beginning, you have a perfect family. And it only messes up the moment independence enters in. And that is what I heard Micaiah saying about the anger and not being able to control your emotions. And what I was hearing you saying, the remedy is community. And so when CJ was talking about Proverbs, in Proverbs, it talks about going to the community when we're in situations like this. That is the only way to correct it. It says, go to the ant, thou sluggard. It's something that CJ has brought up a lot. And where it's in society, what we see is ourselves and we don't like it. So then we try to ascend to the point of being a king or a queen, whatever you prescribe yourself, you should be. And we circumvent the natural order of the family, of the community. And so I was just saying the picture of ants, right? So you have a colony of ants literally in harmony. Like they understand what to do, not by their own thoughts or trying to be independent, but as they see their brothers, their sisters, as they see themselves. It is how I was hearing Uncle Tracy say, if you are deficient in an area, you follow your brother to the place to shore it up. If you have excess in an area, you give and release the excess. So it's just the perfect harmony of the complete picture of healing. It was just, it was how, again, we are trying to say that we don't have to be the worker. So you were talking about family and the perfect picture of that. And in our anger and our emotions, we blame others for the lack of control. We blame whomever is closest. And that is always our parents. I don't know how to say more of it.
All right, Michael, what did you hear Jalen say?
So first, I've been a little distracted because I'm trying to get my dad in the meeting. Micaiah is beckoning me. But from what I heard him say, there is a huge dependence on society or a community that is not independent. The society that we live in today cannot be held accountable and is very independent and very affectionate and has no ability to really be intimate and help someone with their problems. It's instead of just giving a diagnosis, we are looking to create a society or create a community that can judge these problems accurately. And it won't necessarily be called a mental illness. It will have an actual path or course to correction. But I'm going to go back. I'm trying to help Randall join. So just give me a second.
I thought that was pretty good. That pretty accurate. Jalen, you want to add or?
Could I see what Micaiah heard and CJ, and then try to add from that? Because it was, I think that was the gist of it.
Okay.
I can add on to it. I can, and that maybe can clarify some of what you were saying, or see, or say it in a different way. A lot of what people think spirituality is connecting back with God, and they think that they can find God in practices that they do, the trees, the infatuations they have with whatever they see God in, not understanding that the interconnectivity comes only from human accountability to each other in a perfect picture. I can say I go pray to trees and I see God in trees. That's fine and dandy. I see God in nature, but a tree isn't going to hold me accountable the same way a father in the perfect picture will.
Wow, Mac. You keep doing it. Brought out another really good point. So, in order to help with mass shooting, and it brings me to another interesting point. I want to finish this. And in order to help prevent mass shooting, then the father figure in the home must be in operation. And he must know how to hold accountable, starting with the father figure. So if there is any breakdown in the home of relationship, then it's going to lead to different points of trauma, if I can say that. And as trauma compounds, it ends up in being mass shooting. That's a brief. Just gave a brief explanation. I have not looked at the statistics or anything. I endeavored not to before we had this conversation. Because I don't believe that truth is based off of statistics. I think facts are, but truth is not. But I would dare say that it is, by a large majority, men who are doing the most of mass shooting. It's not coming from women. So most of mass shooting is coming from men. Men are doing it. I can't remember why I was saying that, how to connect it with what Micaiah said, but if the father figure in the house is not, there's no sense of accountability in the house, then it will eventually lead to some sorts of trauma. That trauma passed down from generation to generation, and as if it continues, the result of it comes out mass shooting as it is compounded. So years back, we didn't have as much mass shooting. How did we get here today? And a big part of it has to do with unresolved trauma that has not been dealt with. If you have an accountability system, it does not leave room for trauma to go undealt with, meaning there is an evaluation in every home, every household. There's evaluation, then you can start evaluation and proper assessment or proper change according to that evaluation. Then if that begins to happen, then you will begin to curtail mass shooting. Does that make sense? If you don't agree, you can express or agree, whatever. You can challenge it however you want to challenge it.
So in the picture of ants, in the picture of ants, in the picture of ants, you don't see a father. So how is it that it says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard," when you think of ants, you have a queen? And so what I'm saying is, when we talk about the mental illness and things, and you say that it starts with the father. The father is the unseen point. And even in that perfect picture of "Go to the ant, thou sluggard," the queen is beholden to the worker ants the same way as the worker ants are beholden to the queen. And it just reminds me of, so you talk about accountability has to be present.
Okay. So connecting to what you said, Jalen, very interesting point. You said that using the scripture, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways." I can't remember all of the verse, but it talks about she has no ruler, no lead guide or whatever, those kind of things. So in using that, we don't see a picture of a father. So I'm going to use I'm going to try to use a different terminology or example. In common language, again, I would say this: the son is a father type. In what do they call that? Astrology. It is related to a father type. If you look at the moon, it's related to mother type. This is way back when Hebrew astrology, how they looked at things, and the stars were related to the children. So if we would use a form like that for an example, ants are really governed by the sun. They're governed also by how cold it is. They're governed also by how hot it is. So as they understand heat and it starts getting warm, they start coming out of hibernation. They start gathering their food and they gather different things at that time. And then when it starts getting cooler, they start going into their hibernation and they live off of that particular thing that they gathered. All right. There's one picture of it. But what the sun actually does is it assesses everything and it prescribes remedy to everything. What it actually does to a flower, to ants, to animals, everything that is created, it has the ability to assess what is needed, the lack or the deficiency or whatever, and it has the ability to begin to cause some sort of, I'm going to call it remedy. I can't think of the right word. So this is the act of a father type. It's very interesting that God, is considered the father of lights in the book of James. And so what you have to understand is, as God is the father of life, of creation, he asks every father to be in his likeness, meaning to learn, to judge, to learn, to hold accountable in the way that God holds accountable, assess and prescribe remedy. That's where the father is. That's where you see the father for ants, for animals. Animals do have male and female. Ants have male, they can have males and females. And the males, in essence, a lot of times in a lot of insects are governed by the emotion of the female. So whatever the female does, and having more babies and all of those kind of things, and then the males gather food and build and do all of these kind of things to help their community to be healthy, whole, and safe. Inside of the ant kingdom, the males also assess and prescribe remedy. Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Did it make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so what you're seeing, if I use what you're saying, Jalen, as an example, what you're seeing is that the males in our society, I shared this before with this group, in our society, you see a pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid, now we're still talking about mass shooting. What needs to be corrected to change mass shooting? At the top of this pyramid is the father. Yeah. And what happens is in our structure in America, what happens is wife and children come underneath this structure. Friends, people that I'm acquainted with come under this structure. Father, the man is first, the father is at the top, and the wife is under, then the children, and it goes like that. And so you see this pyramid, and this is our structure of protection. But in the insect world and in the animal world, oftentimes, and in the vegetation world, it's just the opposite. You see, the male is the one that is the point. It's an inverted triangle or pyramid. The male is always at the bottom, and the male is always the support of his children, of his wife, and of his children. In most of God's creation, this is what it shows. See, we have it backwards. Then you begin to understand why our society is where it is. It's just one of the reasons. You guys through?
So, yeah, I got a question then. So, would mental illness be seeing a picture of ants, and again, seeing the queen, and making, so the woman now takes on the duties of a man? So, what I'm saying is, in society today, we see a lot of non-binary, transgender. You see a lot of different trying to prescribe yourself your own antidote. So, and what I heard you just say is that in creation, or if you judge it by a standard, so the true standard that has been set, it is always the father's duty. So, and then how you even explain that so kind of what I heard you explain was the Trinity and the way that that is set up in the true of it. So you have Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And you can think of them as less dispension. So you have, God, he's the best. So like you said, in our society, the Father, he's at the top. He's the best. And then you have the Son, and he's all right, but he's not as good as the Father. And then you have the Holy Spirit, who's even less than, both of them, because he's the child. So you have even how it's set up. So you have the Father marrying. So what I guess I would ask is, it seems like what we're seeing is us trying to fix the problem. So I know a lot of people that are turned off with the Bible they go to the extreme. So like you said, or like Micaiah was saying, go to the extremes of, well, God's everywhere. He's in this tree. So instead of connecting, I can be affectionate and have this relationship with nature. I'll go out and just be one with God. How I hear you say it's set up is, so I was trying to pose a question so we could kind of talk more, but it wasn't really a question, so it's starting to kind of get a little jumbled. But what I was hearing you say is, yeah, go ahead.
I think it was a part of what you brought out was very interesting. I want to give opportunity for Chris. Senior, Chris Jr., share, everybody to share. But tapping into what you were saying, Jalen, it was interesting how you deal with the Trinity. And it's the way that the picture that I got in my mind when you brought the Trinity in. Normally, the picture that I get in my mind of the Trinity is usually it looks like a triangle. But what you described of the Trinity looks more like I saw the Father at the bottom, the Son at the middle point, and the Holy Spirit at the top. That's what I heard in how you described it. Very interesting, because that is also the correct structure in which it is put. So that's interesting that you put it in that way. So anyway, I will open it up to Chris. You look like you had something to share earlier. I don't know if we ran you over.
Yeah, it was about crap. It was about something. Oh, yeah, it had to do something with mental illness.
Okay.
Well, when you were referring to the standard, mental illness is, like as you had said before, it's something that you're off the standard. You're off the baseline, off of what you're supposed to be. You're too far off. And given when that happens, it changes a lot of things. Your entire perspective of how you see the world is completely changed, completely warped. And that in turn will impair your judgment. You can't judge things correctly. You can't see them for what they truly are. You're going to see them in your own warped version of it, which can throw everything off. So something, as I would talk to my brother about stuff like this, is that to people like that, if you said, okay, you go look at the tree, to me, that's a tree. All right, how do you describe that? How do we know what its characteristics that tells you that this is a tree and this is what it is? It does its job and it's a tree. To someone who's so far off the baseline, or someone who's far off the standard, they're going to come up with their own version of what a tree is. So that's not a tree because of this. But to you, it's like, that's way off. You're throwing everything out of perspective. You can't correctly see truth. You can't correctly see it. It's so, well, oh, I think a tree is I mean, a little bush that could be considered a tree. It has it's coming out of the ground and it grows tall. But you're like, no, that's not what a tree is. That's not a tree. Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about.
Chris, that is some good stuff. That was real good. Very interesting point that you bring out of judgment and not having the correct judgment based off of a one way I would say it is a bad start in life, a lack of standard. If a father has not been a good representation of a real father, then what happens is the standard has been diminished. If the true level of quality of men is supposed to be a certain way and they fail to be that way, the standard is diminished. What happens to the standard at that point is the standard continues on dropping at whatever point the society accepts as the new norm. If this happens, we end up with mass shooting. Very good point. And what you say, I know you didn't say that, but that's a part of the picture that I got from what you shared. Ties in very.
I appreciate all the comments that were shared. Tracy, you really expressed my burden. This and the things which you shared, I have for a long time, I felt really misunderstood. And when I'm speaking more about when I'm at work and we'll talk about these things, and people will always think, we'll talk about mass shootings and what's the cause of it, and they'll just look at me strange. And so it always caused me to feel like I don't like sharing these things with these people, because these people, it makes them look at me like something's wrong with me. But after hearing you speak, it's like it released something, a weight off me. I remember it was about a couple months ago, we was talking about this same subject, mass killings. And this guy was trying to say that it was due to mental illness. And I said, no, it's not. It has nothing to do with mental illness. I said, it is due to the marriages. He said, no way, I can't see that. So I said to him, it was a group of us. I said to the group, I said, let's consider a dog. I said, you take a pit bull who society paints as a very mean, aggressive dog. I said, you take this pit bull, and I said, you take this big bull, and let's say you handle it roughly, you mistreat it. I said, that pit bull is gonna come out very aggressive. It will become very mean. I said, it will become very selfish. I said, no, you take another pit bull or the same pit bull, and you treat it very gentle, caring, and loving. I said, the attitude of that pit bull would be drastically different than the one who was treated the wrong way. I said to him that the attitudes of the children or attitudes of people are shaped from the house that they come from. So if the house is broken, they're going to display that brokenness. If the house is healthy, they will display that healthy. They will display a healthy home. Children, and what annoys me the most about this, when you talk about accountability, I think you hit a home run, is that it's like society does not want to be accountable, or I would say the mother and father do not want to be accountable for the actions of their children or their sons. So it's like, and this guy was we were speaking to this guy, and he was trying to tell me that the actions of his son has nothing to do with him and his wife. And I couldn't believe it. And I've heard this time and time again at people in my job. But when you look to the Hebrew, that clearly proves that wrong. Because when you look at the word father, which has a numerology of 3, and you look at the word mother, which has a numerology of 41. When you add those 2 numerologies, 41 and 43, you get the numerology of the word child, which is 44. A child comes from the mother and the father. The child is only a reflective of the house that he has come from. So if the house is chaotic, and I've said this already, but if the house is chaotic, the child is going to be chaotic. So when you, I really love the book of Genesis, and I'm gonna share something, and it may not make a lot of sense, but I'll do the best I can. When the scripture says, God separated, on the first day of creation, God separated the light from the darkness. Okay, I want to back up. When you think of the creation story, it's really referring, I'm going to back up. When you think of the creation story, when you read the creation story, it's saying multiple things. One of the things it's saying is for his elect, how his elect will restore the earth. So the earth is in chaos. It's giving you step by step how the earth will be restored. Okay. The first day of creation is a separation of light and darkness. This is referring to the male. When it talks about the separation between heaven and earth, this is referring to female. This is the only thing the separation of heaven and earth is the female can only do that. So when they start talking about on the third day, something begins to form, the separation of the waters from dry land and the vegetation begins to grow. It's talking about an identity begins to be formed from two people who held each other accountable. So a child's identity is formed from his mother and father holding each other accountable. And if the mother nor the father held each other accountable, what you have is a chaotic child and a chaotic society because the house is broken. So I don't know if it all makes sense. I have a lot more than that, a lot more to share, but I'll just give that much.
Yes, I think it made sense. I can't remember. It was something you said in the first part that I really wanted to comment on, but I can't remember. And the last part, it stresses that the relationship, it's coming to me now. The first part where you talk about if the father has chaos in his life or the mother have chaos in their life, whatever form of chaos it is, it passes down to their children. All right. And if that is not dealt with, that chaos in that child is not dealt with, and he grows up and he normalizes and he feels it's okay, then he passes it down from generation. It can be passed down from generation to generation. That is 100% true. What that reflects on, Chris, is that we have not had accurate judgment in our society for decades. So that means that we have been removed from accountability for quite some time now, as for it to get into the condition that it is in now. That covers just not only mass shooting, but it covers I would say sexual immorality, whatever form it is, it begins to cover that. It covers just a large number of areas of the unit between father and mother, or the fact that I come up in a relationship where I had no judgment in my home. And so I implement the same thing in my relationship with my wife, no judgment. what's going to happen is you're going to have a huge lapse in our society. The quality of living or standard will drop simply because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So some of what you talked about, I think very good point as far as passing down some of the undealt with trauma and things that I have had in my life and how I have passed it down to my children. That happens. This has to do with why we have mass shooting. Another thing is, there was something else that you said. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, I'll. Anybody else has any other comment? Or go ahead, Chris, if you have something. Chris, were you going to say something? Chris Senior?
Oh, no.
He ain't even listening. All right. All right, Chris Jr., go ahead.
What you had said about about the whole gender morality and stuff about society.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that a lot of families have been broken now so far into the point where other people, in cases like the women, will start to want to take the place of where a man has failed in. If a father has failed in his duty, it's now caused people nowadays to, especially women, to want to take over the role of what a man does. They want to take over the role of a man and what he does, but don't want to take on the burdens or the accountability or say the problems or the duty, something that makes a man responsible. They don't want to carry over the responsibilities of what a man does, or vice versa. Men wanting to start take over the roles of females and all this chaos because no one has, as we talked about before, no one has really set the standard. So no one has set the standard of this is how things are, and this is how things should be. This is how y'all set it in stone. This is the concrete. It's not ambiguous. It's not subject to change. It will be like this forever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're at today, and especially today, is that people are too fixated on these ideas. And these ideas always fluctuate and change. There's nothing, and gives you kind of the sense of if you fill your head with this stuff, a bunch of things start changing. Like everything starts becoming an idea, nothing concrete, and you're just basically the feeling of just like falling through like a bottomless hole. There's no floor, there's nothing. There's nothing to give you a sense of perspective. There's nothing to hold on to. Everything's all fickle. It goes away, it dies, or it's just really bad.
Very interesting. Again, Chris, I'd like to ask you or someone, one of you young fellas, based off of what Chris said, how has that impacted you in your life as far as nothing being concrete?
That's a tough question because that That's a tough question because that's what I wanted to believe, right? So how it affected me was in a lot of lessons. So not negativity, but like you said, whenever you're deficient in something or you have excess in something, the way to get rid of that or to find the balance is by the accountability. So what I'm trying to say is it affected me to get to this point. So when Chris was talking about in Genesis how it's set up so that you'll know how you are supposed to move in the midst of a perverse nation. And then Chris Jr. said, he touched on that point as well and said that there is something that is concrete. So what started happening for me was I prescribed myself to be, well, I'm bipolar, you name it, I had it. Sleep apnea, sleep paralysis, and that was because, again, my reality was whatever I wanted it to be. I could shape it, I could form it, because that's how the world works, right? The world works in a way that you are whoever you want to be. And some of the pictures that I was getting about how it affected me is, so the Nebuchadnezzar story and what Chris Jr. was saying reminded me of that, in terms of we all want to be on top or be seen. And it's funny that so what a true father and a true marriage does. So you have a mother and a father. So the father does something, but then there's something that only the mother can do. And once they both fulfill their duty, you have the culmination of knowledge, or the culmination of something bigger than them. They're no longer what you see. So how it was affecting me was I had to stop wanting to be seen, stop wanting my trauma to be validated, stop wanting the poor me, so the victim mentality, because so in the Bible, there's always been an oppressor, and that oppressor is accountability. So when the first murder happened and it was a brother on brother crime, that wasn't the first quote unquote offense, or that he wasn't the offender. He played victim. So he was confronted with how he looked. And so I'm saying how it affected me was when I was confronted with how I looked, you have the fight or flight, right? So it's universal. Everybody, when faced with the situation that heightens your senses or your emotions, you have one of two ways to react or respond. And I started seeing that, for one, I wasn't fast enough to run away. You know what I mean? It was just like, and I kept trying, like, it wasn't like, I touched the hot stove once and I stopped after that. It was a continuous looking at a broken picture and saying, oh, I can remove my own moat. I can help myself, because look at the world. Who can help me? Like, I know y'all see what I see, right? Like, who can help me? I'm here shaping reality however I want. So I believe in God, you know what I mean? It's like, so if I believe in God, he ordered my steps or whatever. So whatever I do is his fault ultimately, because he shouldn't have put me on earth. Like, it's like the Adam and Eve story. Why would he put me here if he knew that I want to have sex? Like, you know what I mean? Why would he put me here if he knew I have emotions that, thou shalt not? And now, as I am getting understanding of what accountability, reflection, judgment, the true of wisdom, it's helping me see what Chris was saying, what they were both saying, that a perfect marriage has no choice. So father and mother have no choice but to be beholden to the child. So in Genesis, that's what we're shown, that the father has no choice but to be beholden to his children. So he says, you know what? I accept this responsibility. My spirit will not always strive with man. That is the point. That is not going to change. That is something that is set, that he will not always strive with man. So you have a savior, or the knowledge of that, right? Where Jesus or his son supposedly came to save people. But I mean, again, if he came to save people way back then, so Uncle Tracy was talking about decades, generations of this trauma being passed down. But yeah, if you know, all of this stuff happened way back when. So for one, Adam sinned before me, so I ain't got nothing to do with that. And then, you know, Jesus, he said he saved me, so why am I here? Like, you know what I mean? Why would I? So I have to just wait here till he comes back? Like, you know what I mean? I just have to hear about all this terrible things on the news and there's nothing I can do about it? Is that what you mean to tell me? You know, so how it affected me was by understanding, again, it's easy to see things in nature or that's not emotional the same as you in terms of your brother. It's easy to see, you know, that there's something bigger than you until we start dealing with, again, our family and the true of it and where we are today. And the more that I've embarked on that journey of understanding how, for one, a sinner like me could ever do anything, because again, the Bible's basically contradicting itself if I can shape reality when it says that there's nothing I can do to get into heaven, but this man came and defeated death to save me, but there's nothing. So it's like, again, what's the point of living? And we take it upon ourselves to fix it, right? So the mental illness that if you end your life on earth right now or the life of someone else, that is what solidifies where you go. Yeah, but it's learning how it can say that the children will not inherit the sins of their father, and the true of that. So how it affected me was a lot of learning, a lot of having to unlearn everything that I thought I knew, which is hard because, again, it's like I have knowledge that I'm here. I'm 23 years old. I must have done something right to still be alive. That's kind of.
Thank you, Jalen. That was good. One of the things that I want to say about what Jalen said is that what crossed my mind, very interesting. He used the word victim. Did you know that every shooter either feels that he plays the role of victim? Every shooter plays the role of victim. There's a negative victim, and there is, if we can say it this way, positive victim. And the difference between the two, between a negative victim and a positive victim is, let's say, for instance, Black people have suffered slavery for so long, and it has caused them to devalue themselves, not have any value, not believe in themselves, things like that. And then there's a victim that comes along with that. But there's also a victim or feeling victimized when you have come from a place of having and having plenteous. And what you do is you feel like when your rights or your things are being taken away from you, you are being victimized. Then you retaliate, you shoot, you use a gun to keep these things in place. That is still a victim, even if you come from that place. But there's one that comes from a positive, meaning seemingly value, and there's one that comes from devalue. Most of mass shooting comes from most of that place of positive value victim. Oftentimes it starts from a place of feeling like my rights or my this is being taken away from me. You have that. That may be an unfair statement. But I would ask that you would examine that very closely to check and see if it is actually accurate that these people start from, they can grow up in a home, they can feel like their parents didn't spend enough time, their parents didn't give them enough, all of that, that seems to be negative victim. But behind a lot of it, on the other hand, is coming from a place of not necessarily being downtrodden or pushed down or pushed under or trampled on. It doesn't always come from that. And those kind of, if you were to say, for example, black on black crime, to some degree, that comes from negative victim. Most of the time when you have, so to speak, if there was something called white on white crime, if you had something like that, most of the time, a lot of times you have it over my rights being taken, or my rights being infringed on, or my rights being, this is my space. Where blacks come from, I don't have a space. I'm trying to get one. I'm just trying to illustrate the difference in the two types of victim.
Yeah. I personally feel like that's a fair and accurate point, because part of, as we've been talking about mass shootings, I know that in one sense we're talking about something that we're seeing particularly today, but in my mind at least, this is the same thread. To give a light example of what we saw with the Tulsa race riot, or the Tulsa race massacre, as they're saying now, there have been, whether it's been recorded in history or not, when you talk about the reckless abandon or the actions that people have taken, whether it's the mass shootings, the mass murder, the mass killing, physically or otherwise, this is something that is not new. And I would say that part of what I heard you and Jalen further illustrate was the point of love. I understand that word has been heavily neutralized, but when we are talking about judgment and accountability, you can't have love without judgment or accountability. So the reason why I bring that up is because we've talked about partially how we've tried to judge ourselves, or how we try or attempt to love ourselves, whether that is accepting things about us or validating things about us in a certain way, without reflection, without judgment or accountability. But I also think that, as you said, judgment and accountability, I was kind of using the word love and the reaction that comes from that. So, for example, when you talk about the civil rights movement, and the violence that was a reaction to judgment, that in one sense tries to deny or tries to discredit really the position and the truth of the position that's being held. Those were just a couple of thoughts that came to mind when you and Jalen were speaking.
Wow, thank you. Let's see, Chauncey, what do you have in your mind? Randall, neither one of you have said anything, so. I guess both of them disappeared. All right, anybody else? We're going to start winding it down.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would just say it, for me, even understanding the positive of victim. So if we can use that, and that's what Jesus was a representation of, that instead of being a mass murderer, so he's not coming back to kill. So judgment, and like CJ said, judgment and how he was using love, that he's coming back out of love, not out of spite, that we're in such a bad place, which is why things like the civil rights movement and all of these things, for me, are more than just some past thing. So how we look at history, that's how we look at history in society today, that it's all some past thing. And to make up for our mistakes, we conform reality to fit our standard or our needs or our wants.
Good. Very good point. I was you brought it back up again, just thinking about what CJ said, what you brought back up about love. And again, how the CJ basically said, without accountability, without assessment, and prescription of remedy, prescribing something after you have assessed it, without that, love is not in existence. Love is not in existence. Without being able to do that, you cannot have love. Without judgment, you cannot have love. What's interesting is that without going, what Machias mentioned in the beginning, without having trust, it shapes love. And it goes back to the point of some of the things that Chris Jr. basically was saying, how all of these impact our judgment. He was talking about how our judgment is impacted. It gets viewed or skewed. We're talking about that. To me, if you say mental illness, you're actually greatly talking about someone's judgment, and their judgment being so skewed and impacted that they don't make sound or right decisions. That's not the I don't say that psychology, probably the psychological world doesn't probably prescribe it that way, but it is somewhat in their form. Your judgment is greatly impacted in order to people, for instance, people start believing that something is after them. People start believing that someone told me to do this. All of this is impacted by your judgment. All of it is impacted by your judgment. So if you are not honest with yourself, if you're not truthful, when I say with yourself, I mean after someone who really in true love is reflecting correctly on you, and you're not honest with it, it leads to a breakdown of standard of living in you. It begins to tear down a whole structure of health as you do that. And if you keep that position, it passes down from generation to generation. All right, Randa, you have anything?
Oh, yeah. I got plenty of time listening. I should come up with something. I'd been watching the news. I probably don't watch the news the same way other people do. Whenever I'm looking at all this stuff about the mass shootings, what I notice is that there is a whole spectrum of solutions. And they talk about gun control, and they talk about mental health, and they talk about all these different solutions. And then whenever the parents of the mass shooter have a statement, their statement is, I didn't know there was anything wrong with my son. And that's pretty much the end of it. So nobody's looking at the parent. Nobody's questioning anything about the guy's background. And they're talking about everything but that. And that is and I was thinking about, if all these brilliant minds, some of these news commentators, they have law degrees and they're really highly intelligent. And I value a lot of their opinions and how they approach things. But the language they use versus the language in this group, it reminds me of what Chris was saying, little Chris. And that is, when you're raised with all this stuff that's far removed from the way it's supposed to be, you develop a language that is way out there. The solutions they're coming up with is way removed. And I am astounded at the contrast in the approach of these things. And I would like to think that anybody who leans toward those narratives, even as I visit with these clients and what have you, and people have things to say, they subscribe to these various solutions. And so there's various narratives and various camps, and all these folks have lean this way or that way. I would really be curious to see how these folks that are already persuaded in their mind, how this sharp contrasting approach hits them. I'd be real curious.
Okay.
That's pretty much all I got.
Good. I think it was good, Randall. We have not really got, I think I'm glad that you brought up basically how the just news sources, all of those things are trying to address it today. I'm glad that you brought that up. One thing that I would say, adding to what you said, is to be aware that all of the majority of approaches to it, whether they say it's mental illness or whether they say that it's taking away guns is not going to help. You need to help. You need to work on mental illness to some degree, or where they say we're going to restrict guns. All of it is politicized, so it cannot crystallize ever into something positive. Mm-hmm. So we will be with results of passing laws to stop something or to allow something that will never reach its potential of totally eradicating the problem, because the laws can't do that. And so when you see them talking over the news and all of those kind of things, and trying to figure out how to solve this problem, and they don't go to the root of the source, news never does, or politics, or The presidents from ages have not gone to the root of the problem. It is a money-making machine. It is a way of this whole subject of whether on one end or the other. Money is involved on one end or the other. So we can't really get to the bottom of it. We need change in our homes. We need change. We need men who are actually stepping up as real fathers. We need women being real mothers. One of the things I want to say is that some people would argue probably with some of this and say they put it all on the men and they said it's all about the men and didn't say anything about the woman. There's a place for women in helping make that change. But the truth is, it starts with the man. It starts with the man. I am not putting the man, not pushing him up. It starts with him. It starts change. If he would change, you would have a trickle-down effect all the way down. It starts with the man. It starts at the man being at the point of the inverted pyramid. It starts there. If the man is on the top and everything carries him, then you're going to have a messed up society. If you change it around, you can repair it.
You know, I'm wanting to disagree with you just a little bit. When the man has his ass handed to him, it's his ass being handed to him is where it starts. If that man says, look here, wife, look here, children, look here, world, y'all need to take care of me. I'm having my ass handed to me. It ain't working. If that man says, I got this, y'all just watch me, I got this. I'm going to handle this. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. It's my wits end. I'm going to put the work in. I'm the one doing it. Well, at that point, it really starts. But otherwise, a man is an initiating point. And right now, whenever you look at the news and you look at everything that's happening, I'd have to say there's a little bit of initiation going on. There's some stupid shit happening that ought to be motivating men. That's pretty much all I got to say.
And what you were saying with earlier, Uncle JC, about how that all these, how you and Brenda were talking about how all these people's solutions to these problems aren't really getting to the root of these problems. They're more treating the symptoms of the problem. Yes. Like someone else is bleeding and you're just gonna, okay, here, take this, you know, and we'll try to stop that. We're not getting to the whole, you're not really doing anything to actually stop or to heal, to fix or remedy the problem that this person's bleeding. You're just, here, just patch it up and stuff. And they're not really not getting to the, they're not being really direct with it. They're all going around, no, we can fix this. No, we can fix that. Oh, we can take guns away. I'm like, okay, you take guns away, it's still going to happen. You got people going to get knives, okay? You can't take someone's knives away. Well, then people are going to start hurting each other with their hands, their fists. You're not getting to the direct problem. You're fixing the symptoms.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's crazy because I've heard a lot this week. I heard some about the mass shootings on the news, and it was talking about how, it's the white versus black thing. You don't see black people shooting up schools. You don't see, it's disenfranchised white men and all that other stuff. And my rebuttal to that, my challenge to that is that Black people can have the same victim mentality. I know for a fact that my father spanked me, I spanked my child. And it wasn't until I was put in a straitjacket of, you have to hear your son because you weren't heard, and this is the reason why you're passing down this victim mentality, that I was able to start making changes. Black people have the same victim mentality in their own way.
I just wanted to make a quick point real quick. It's, on one hand, it's a little bit neutral. I think I understand what you're saying, Micaiah. I think that when it reminds me of a conversation that we had on the Zoom call when Uncle Tracy talked about temptation, and we also talked about common. I see that there's a point of commonality, even in pathologies and things that humans struggle with or have to struggle against across the board. And that puts in context what makes you immune or less susceptible or to express something a certain way. So where Uncle Tracy talked, he talked about men being more prone to be involved in mass shootings than women. It doesn't mean that women haven't killed anyone, but and there is I think that there is a point to that. Now, that again, there is a point of commonality even in what we struggle with as men and women as humans, but that there are certain characteristics and there are certain experiences that alter how we express certain diseases or how we express certain infirmities or illnesses. And I'm not sure if you feel like that connects, but that's been something that's been on my mind, which is why I shared it, not because it was really to address what you just said.
No, I definitely see that. I didn't say that part, but that's what I was trying to get to.
Yes, that's what I was trying to express too, CJ. You expressed it real well. All right, Chunks, what you got?
Nothing. I agree with what everything everybody has said. It's good ideas.
Okay, Michael, you clear?
Yeah, everyone has really said a lot that all connects and ties together. There's not much more I could add. I think similarly to what Chris Jr. was saying about the perspective of the tree, like you can look at a bush and call it a tree, and go to the ant thou sluggard. If you notice in less human populated areas, nature is a lot more connected. And metaphorically speaking, those areas are more accountable and better judged as to reaching its greater capacity on how to effectively heal deficiencies. And it is not simple. It is not as simple as just observe nature and you will learn how to judge your family. But we must act in the same ways of accountability and judgment to receive that, to connect those two pieces is to have love. Yes. Or I think the word is Elohim in the home, and that will effectively remedy, or we will be able to effectively judge how to not raise school shooters. I mean, if the home is complete or whole, if the father is whole first, he can fix the family and prevent that child from growing up to do damage to society. And as my dad said, oh man, I lost the thought there, but you can prevent these things from happening if you, it goes into, this is the temptation when you see on the news, when you see the lack of hitting the root, when you see politics and you see the news not actually hitting the root and they're just expressing what happened, that is not the solution. That is just an observation. And it is a money-driven system. And the system that we are trying to repair is not money-driven It does not have the father on top being supported by the family, the children, and the wife. It is the father on the bottom, lifting everyone up, the honor, building honor. God works in this way where he wants us to find or love him through honor, not as a, this is what you have to do to obtain this. No, it's honor based. And that's my perspective.
Very good, Michael. Thank you. All right, everybody satisfied? Chris, you have anything you wanted to add before we close? Chris Sr.?
Yeah, a little bit. I wanted to say that man, kind of slipped my mind, but I like that in this session that we got to the root of the issue, and we expressed how that it starts with the man. And I think that if we're going to do, if we want to fix this problem, the men are going to have to circumcise. This is what it means when it separates from light from darkness. The man has to be circumcised. I'm not talking about physical circumcision, a circumcision of genital. I'm talking about something much greater than a physical circumcision of genital. But he's got to remove those things that are chaotic in his life. This is the very start. That is the very, very start to create a new heaven, new earth. And if we as men cannot do this part, this earth will stay chaotic, and these things will continue to happen. They'll continue to happen. So it's imperative as men, we take first accountability for the condition of this earth. If we can do that, if we can do that, you know, we can change the world. So, you know, that's really the weight I feel in my heart when I talk to people. It's with men mainly. There's no sense of accountability. They don't want to take any kind of accountability for their actions, the home, the house, or anything. It's always want to keep it like as if they have no, it's not connected to them. I don't know how to put it, but I think you guys understand what I'm trying to say. And it's you know, when I look at that, it's a reminiscence of how I used to be in my own home. And I didn't take accountability for my home. I didn't take accountability for actually my sons, my wife, or anything. I thought, well, you just, you know. And so it caused all sorts of problems and stuff. And when I began to take accountability for the condition of my home is when things begin to change. And so, you know, I just hope that we as men in this planet can really begin to take accountable and circumcise our hearts from the things that are dark.
Good summary. All right. We're going to close. Mac, you good?
I'm good.
All right. I think everybody's pretty much good. All right. Let's do it again next week, and I will get in touch with you, the young guys, to see how we're going to produce this.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thanks for getting it set up.
No
Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.